Welcome back to Mystery Case X. Today we're continuing our Strange Case series with a case that happened in the state of Utah in 1970. The victim was a single mother. She was only 23 years old. For more than 4 decades, the person who killed her stayed hidden. But during all those years, one person never stopped trying to bring the truth into the light. The year the murder happened, that person was only 4 years old. She was the victim's daughter. So how did this case unfold? Let's get into it. On July 30th, 1970, in a home in Price, Utah, 4-year-old Heidi Jones Assay woke up and walked into the living room. What she saw there would likely stay with her for the rest of her life. Her mother was lying dead on the floor in a massive pool of blood. There was so much blood it had spread across almost the entire living room floor. Imagine a child that young seeing something like that. Out of pure instinct, Heidi screamed, cried, and ran out of the house. Neighbors heard her and rushed over to help. Then they called the police. When officers arrived, they confirmed that the victim was 23-year-old Loretta Jones, Heidi's mother. Loretta's body was in the middle of the living room. Blood was everywhere. She had been stabbed many times. The autopsy showed that she had died around 10 o'clock the night before. She had 17 stab wounds in her back, 2 wounds in the front of her chest, and 1 cut across her throat. There were signs that she had been sexually assaulted. But strangely, investigators did not find defensive wounds on her body. Usually when a victim fights back, there are injuries on the hands, arms, or other areas that show an attempt to resist. Loretta's body did not show that. The house also had not been heavily disturbed. There were no signs of forced entry. The locks had not been broken. Nothing appeared to be missing. That told investigators this probably wasn't a robbery. The killer may have been someone Loretta knew. Taking a statement from a 4-year-old child was extremely difficult. Police were only able to gather that Heidi said she had been asleep and had not heard anything. A murder had happened in the living room close to her bedroom, but somehow she heard no noise. Investigators believed Loretta may have tried to stay quiet while she was being attacked. She may have been afraid that if she screamed and her daughter came out of the bedroom, Heidi would become the next victim. So, even as she was being killed, she may have forced herself to stay silent to protect her little girl. That was what police suspected. The wounds on Loretta's body appeared to have been made by a small folding knife, a personal knife with a thin blade. But police never found the weapon at the scene. They also recovered semen from the victim's body. But this was 1970. DNA technology was still far too primitive to help investigators identify a suspect. Today, that kind of evidence might have solved the case quickly. Back then, it led them nowhere. That same night at around 9 o'clock, about an hour before Loretta was killed, residents had reported that another young girl was nearly abducted nearby. She had been riding her bike in front of her house when a strange man came up behind her, covered her mouth, and appeared to be trying to take her away. But the girl fought hard and screamed. Her brother and father heard her from inside the house and ran out. The man escaped before they could catch him. Because this happened in the same neighborhood only about an hour before the murder, and because the target was also female, police began to consider the possibility that the same man may have been involved in both incidents. Sometime later, Loretta's death finally opened up a little more. Heidi, still only 4 years old, remembered a few more details. She said that before she fell asleep, she heard a man talking to her mother in the living room. The voice sounded like Uncle Tom. When police read Loretta's diary, they found the name Tom Egley. He had been her boyfriend for the past 2 months. Investigators went to speak with Tom Egley, the man who had been dating Heidi's mother. He admitted that he had been romantically involved with Loretta, but he claimed he was not there on the night of the murder. He gave police a list of places he said he had gone that night. He said he had gone out to eat, gone drinking, and stopped at a bar. When police checked the bar, employees confirmed that he had been there, but they could not remember exactly what time he arrived. They also remembered that there may have been red spots on his shirt, but the lighting inside the bar was dark, so they could not say for sure what they had seen. None of this was enough to move the case forward. Police also brought Tom Egley in to see whether he was connected to the attempted kidnapping. They placed him in a lineup behind one-way glass. From inside the room, the suspects could not see out, but the witnesses outside could see them clearly. Egley stood with several other suspects, and the little girl who had nearly been abducted was brought in to identify the man. As soon as she looked at the lineup, she pointed straight at Tom. She said he was the man who had tried to take her. Tom Egley later admitted to that incident, but he claimed he had only thought the girl was cute and had meant it as a joke. He tried to explain himself in court, but he was still convicted. The sentence was light. He served only 90 days in jail for attempted kidnapping and disorderly conduct. 3 months and he was out. Police still could not prove he had anything to do with Loretta's murder. And just like that, the case fell cold for more than 40 years. By 2009, Heidi was 43 years old. She said that for 4 decades she had never truly slept peacefully. She was always afraid Tom Egley would come back for revenge and kill her too. On top of that fear, she carried the trauma of seeing her mother lying dead in a pool of blood when she was just a little girl. It made it almost impossible for her to live with any real sense of peace. In 2009, she was still determined to find the killer. Then, a small stroke of luck came her way. She managed to convince an old high school friend, now a police officer, to help her. His name was Brewer. He agreed, and he also convinced the police department where he worked to reopen the case. When investigators reopened the case, they had very little to work with. There were Heidi's childhood memories, some crime scene photographs, and old newspaper articles from 1970. That was about it. Police began looking into Tom Egley's former girlfriends. In his younger years, Tom had been good-looking and known as a womanizer. Saying he dated 2 women at once would almost be too generous. It was more like he cast a net and kept several women around at the same time. That was his personal life. Police tracked down women who had known him, dated him, or been involved with him around the time of the murder. One of those former girlfriends, now much older, remembered something unusual about that night. She said Tom had come to her house very late to sleep over, but as soon as he arrived, he went straight into the bathrooms, took a shower, and washed his own clothes. That detail stayed with her because during the entire time she had been with him, she had never seen him wash his own clothes. He usually had his girlfriends do it for him. It was not proof, but it strengthened investigators' suspicion that Tom was their main suspect. After that, police found Tom Egley again. By then, many years had passed, and he was an old man living in Colorado, about 500 miles from the crime scene in Utah. He had been married 3 times and had 5 children, but he was living alone. When investigators approached him, he acted like a confused 69-year-old man who couldn't remember much. He said he couldn't remember the names of former girlfriends because there had been too many. But when they asked about the night of Loretta's murder, he suddenly remembered every detail. Where he went, what he ate, which places he visited, what time he was there. Everything came back very clearly. Then police used a psychological tactic. They asked him if the person who killed his girlfriend was found today. What punishment did he think that person deserved? Tom answered that if the killer had not committed any other crimes in the past 40 years, then maybe he should just be forgiven. That answer could not be used as evidence, but it told investigators something. When a guilty person is asked to choose a punishment for someone who did exactly what he did, he often chooses the lightest possible outcome. In Tom's case, that outcome was basically, let him go. Another person might have answered differently. A victim's family member would almost certainly demand the harshest punishment. To police, Tom's answer made their suspicion even stronger. But suspicion still was not enough. Investigators then asked Heidi for permission to exhume her mother's body and look for new evidence. Science had advanced so much since 1970, and there was a chance modern forensic testing could reveal something that had been impossible to find before. Heidi agreed immediately. She had spent her whole life waiting for her mother's case to be solved. In July 2016, investigators exhumed Loretta's remains to see whether any forensic evidence could still be recovered. But sadly, the body and coffin had been badly damaged by the soil conditions. Water had seeped in and almost all potential evidence had been destroyed. They did not find new physical evidence. So police tried another strategy. They made the exhumation public and told the media that they had uncovered important new information that could help solve the case, and that the killer would eventually be caught. They let the story spread, hoping Tom Egley would hear it. They also said that modern technology had allowed them to analyze old crime scene photographs in ways that were impossible back in 1970. According to what they released, it appeared that before she died, Loretta may have written something in blood, possibly a clue pointing to the killer's name. The two letters appeared to be T and O, almost like the beginning of Tom. After those details were released to the media, police went to speak with Tom again. This time they noticed he seemed more tense and easier to provoke. Tom began asking questions about the exhumation results. He wanted to know whether DNA could still be used as evidence after 40 years. Suddenly, he was very interested in all the things an innocent person would not normally obsess over. Investigators became even more convinced they were looking at the right man. But still, they did not have enough evidence to arrest him. Just as it seemed their efforts might collapse, a neighbor of Tom Egley stepped into the story. Her name was Lisa Carter. She called the police and told them that Tom had recently asked her an unusual question. He said that if he ever had to go away somewhere, would she be able to look after his house and feed his pets? That caught investigators' attention. To them, it suggested one of two possibilities. Either Tom was preparing to run or he was preparing to turn himself in. Either way, he was thinking about leaving his home, and that was why he needed someone to care for the house and the animals. To gather more evidence, police asked Lisa Carter to help. They fitted her with recording equipment and asked her to visit Tom regularly, talk with him, and gently bring up the past to see whether he might slip or reveal something about the murder from 40 years earlier. Lisa agreed. Day after day, she went over to speak with him. She promised that if he went anywhere, she would watch the house and feed his pets so they would not go hungry. She built trust. She talked to him about the past. She asked if there was anything he still regretted or carried inside him. And somehow she accomplished what police had been trying to do for decades. On the recordings, they did not just hear Tom wavering or talking about old relationships. They heard him confess that he had killed Loretta in 1970. Even more than that, Lisa managed to convince Tom Egley to turn himself in. She was not just helpful. She was extraordinary. In August 2016, Tom Egley, now 76 years old, surrendered. He told the court and investigators that on the night of the murder, he had gone to Loretta's house and the two had argued. According to him, Loretta refused to have sex with him anymore because she knew he was a womanizer who had been seeing multiple women. In a rage, he used his folding knife to threaten her, sexually assaulted her, and then killed her. When investigators asked whether he knew 4-year-old Heidi was asleep in the bedroom, he said yes. But after killing Loretta, he panicked and left. He claimed he never intended to kill Heidi. During the trial, Tom spoke about the guilt and regret he had carried for all those years. But after reviewing the case, the court convicted him of second-degree murder. Second-degree murder means the killing was not planned in advance, but happened during anger or impulse. The crime was brutal, but because prosecutors did not establish that it had been premeditated, it did not rise to first-degree murder. Tom Egley was sentenced to 10 years to life in prison. After more than 4 decades, the case was finally solved. The killer was finally punished. And in this story, there is something strange about the way people's lives connect. Some connections bring pain and loss. Others bring help when it is needed most. People often say that every person we meet enters our life for a reason. In this case, Heidi's 40-year determination may not have been enough without her old friend in the police department. And the police may never have brought the killer into the light without the courage and patience of Lisa Carter, the kind neighbor who helped persuade him to confess. Every piece seemed separate at first, but in the end they connected and carried the case to its conclusion. There is also something in this story that feels like consequences finally catching up. No matter where people come from, no matter what culture or country they live in, the truth has a way of waiting. Sometimes it does not appear in a day, a month, or a year. Sometimes it takes 40 years. And because justice can move slowly, some people start to believe it will never come at all. But this case reminds us that hidden crimes do not always stay hidden forever. The past can go quiet, but it does not always disappear. And sooner or later, the things someone tried to bury may rise back to the surface. That's where we'll close today's case. Thank you for listening and staying with me until the end. If you have thoughts about this case, or if there's another case you want me to cover, leave a comment below. I'll keep looking into more strange and haunting stories to bring you in the next videos. Until then, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you again in the next case.